spend some time with the system and figure out how it works.
Hey, it's Walter here, and you're at the Think Profit podcast, where we're going to help you develop a rock-solid trading confidence and avoid the potentially endless cycle of system switching. Right, Hugh?
That's right. We're going to help you develop a wealth mindset, develop a trading strategy that fits your core personality, and help you overcome the obstacles that stop over 90% of traders.
All right, Hugh, sounds good. You ready to go?
Yeah, let's do this.
Hey, Walter, we have a question from YouTube. So this guy says, I've been watching the podcast for a while, and he hasn't gotten to watching all of it, but he's a beginner and he has a problem with exiting trades. What he does is his stop losses are 10 to 20 pips, and he'll move to break even at 30 pips. And he says that he consistently can catch 50 pips, but a majority of the time he doesn't know when to take profits, and he's always hoping for more. And then basically it turns against him and he either loses or breaks even. So what are your thoughts on trying to fix that?
So I wrote about this in the Naked Forex book. Like, you kind of have to decide who you are, or you can be both, right? So I talk about this idea of being a runner where you like the trailing exits, and you're going to have these really big wins occasionally, but a lot of times you're just going to have like middling okay trades, and you're going to give back profit, right? Mm-hmm. Or if you're a gunner, you use targets and you look for specific targets that can be based on quantitative data that you have, like the pair usually goes this far in 10 candles or whatever, you know what I mean? Like, you can do something like that, but at the end of the day, you're just happy with the target. Now, I like to do both. So what I will do is I will have a target. Some systems, the target is relatively easy to achieve, provided the trade is winner, provided the signal's okay in this instance. And then the other bit of the other half of the trade, usually I will use a trailing exit on, because I like to catch those big winners occasionally. And anyone who's a trend follower will tell you that will make your year, that time of the year where you get that really big trade or two trades of the year. So that's my belief, is that you can decide to be one or the other, or split it up. Usually the test that I ask traders to use to determine whether you're a runner or a gunner is to say, all right, hey, Hugh, imagine you're in a trade and your trade is up 100 pips, but then it goes against you and pulls back, and you end up losing 50 of that 100 pip profit, and you're out at 50 pip profit. Okay, so that's scenario one. Scenario two is you are in a trade, it goes in your favor. As soon as it hits 50 pips, you get out, and you're very excited. But then if you had waited just a little bit longer, it would have gone 100 pips. So that's scenario two. Which of those scenarios is more psychologically distressing? Is it scenario one? If that's the case, then you probably are a gunner. If it's scenario two, then if that's more psychologically distressing, then you're probably a runner, and you'd be better off using a trailing exit. Or you can do like me and do both, and that way you can always pat yourself on the back when when it's a winner no matter what, right? So it really comes down to that. You just don't know. Like, you can use the ADX, and you can use the moving averages, and you can do that, the MACD, and you can do all these things to determine whether or not the trade's going to keep going. But at the end of the day, the trade doesn't care where your stop is, if it's at break even or if you're up 900 pips. The market doesn't care. It is probably going to go up and down. Even when it's going down, even when it's going up, it's going to go up and down. So whether you get clicked out on your trailing exit or your break even stop, the market don't care no more. So what do you say about that?
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think, like you said, the data is super important, right? I think if you have a lot of data, you can really see, okay, does this make more sense to do this for me, or does it make more sense to let it run? One example recently that I tested, apparently it only works in the euro US dollar, the system that I tested, but works really well. And what I looked at was, I asked like several questions. Okay, how far does this run from the entry? What's the biggest run that it has? And then how often does it hit these other points, like 1R, 2R, 3R, or whatever? And I found out that you could get like 7R on some of these trades. So that was a reasonable target that you could put in there. I started using a 7R profit target at every trade, but my exit was on a moving average. So if it crosses over the moving average and it closes on the other side of that moving average, and I'll close it out. And that seemed to be the best balance between capturing some profits and still having that, capturing that big run also. So I think it really is about the data. Like, look at the data. Don't look at the data from a perspective of a particular trading system, but ask some questions like, how far does it run? How far it does get into profit before it snaps back? Or how often does your entry actually work as written? So those are some things to look at, and not necessarily just taking a certain strategy and going with that.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, and traders will find when they look at trailing exits that there are different types of trailing exits, right? They're like tighter ones that are going to bump up your win rate, but they're going to reduce your average winner size. Mm. And then there are looser exits that are going to depress your win rate, but your average win size is going to go up because it's going to more easily capture those huge wins, right? Those 9R, 10R wins and things like that. So yeah, so it really depends on what you want to do. I mean, I will say most of the time when I've looked at it, I have found, not always, but most of the time, the trailing exit is the way to go in terms of if you want gross profits, right? Mm. It kind of makes sense, right? Like, you're letting the market give you as much profit as it wants to. That's not always the case, because what you'll find is that some systems, they kind of have like momentum signals, right? And it's just good for a little pop, and it's not, do you know what I mean? It's not necessarily likely to keep going. So it really depends on you, and how you interact with your strategy. So yeah, like what you were saying was really interesting. Like, if you look at the average distance that a trade goes, right? And then you go, well, the median is 75 pips, right? So I'm going to use that as my target, right? Because that's the median. And so, half of them are going to go further than that, half of them aren't. Remember, that doesn't mean you're going to have a 50% win rate or whatever, because it's just of the winning trades, right? So it's only the winning trades are even going to get on that side where the median is, right? So, all those things you have to take into account. Yeah. So, I mean, it's really interesting, I think, when you're building a strategy, because you're forced to answer the questions like, what's important to me? I mean, kind of these sorts of things that come up a lot in trading. We talk about it in the podcast, where all these things keep coming up. Like, what's important to me? How do I deal with this? What does this mean? Right. And so when you're building your strategy, a lot of those questions come up because you're confronted with, okay, if I do this, then this is probably going to happen. Am I happy with that? Or should I do this so that I avoid this sort of feeling, or this sort of, going down this path? So it's really interesting. In a lot of ways, it's like you're thinking like, who should I marry? Should I marry this person? Yeah. She's really great and everything, but she's got a cocaine habit. What am I? You know what I mean? Like, so like, it's sort of like it's the same thing with trading systems. There's always going to be something you don't like about it. Even like the brilliant trading systems that have high win rates and high average winners and all that stuff, they usually have the problem of not trading that often, right? Like, there's always something about So
and along those lines, like, you're not going to find out about your girlfriend's cocaine habit unless you spend some time with her. So like, the same thing with the trading system, right? You got to go through the iterations, you got to do the testing, you got to look at the data, you got to get on the screen and do some demo or whatever, live trading. So yeah, spend some time with the system and figure out how it works.
Great point.
All right, cool. Thanks, Walter.
Yeah.
See ya.
All information in this podcast is for educational and informational purposes only and is not trading or investment advice.